Hello everyone. For today's lesson we'll be looking at styling boxes. So styling boxes. Previously we looked at align heights, text alignments, how to style our text, talked about all this, font style, font family, font weight, styling text, right? So we know that from the box model, we know that every element in HTML is interpreted using a rectangular box, just like I had displayed here. We have a rectangular box. Even this link, if I should give it the same property, you see that it also has a rectangular box around it. Okay, but I'm just going to clean that now so that it doesn't distract us. So today we're going to talk about how to style those boxes. So we have CSS outline. The element has a black border and a green outline with a width of 10 px. So usually when we talked about the box model, we said every element has a content box, it has a border, it has a padding, and it has a margin. But there was also one other part of that box model that is not really used most of the times, but you can use it to just make a text or make your content stand out more. So it is usually around the border. So the border is inside the outline. Okay. The outline is a line that is drawn around elements outside the borders to make the element stand out, basically. So styling boxes overview, we have these main outline properties. We have outline style, we have outline color, outline width, outline offset, then outline. So for the first one, we have outline. The outline property specifies the style of the outline that can have one of the following values. So let's try and implement this. So now we have outline. Let's do outline style. Let's do the first one, which is dotted. Right. Then you can see there's a dotted outline around the border. I don't know if I have to zoom in for you to see this. Yeah. If you can look closely, there's a dotted line around the black border, right? So we can change that to dashed, but before that I want us to use this outline width to make it thicker. Okay, so the outline width property specifies the width of the outline and can have one of the following values. It can have thin, it can have medium, it can have thick, then you can have a specific size in any of the units. So I'm just going to use thick. So let's do outline outline width. And if I save this and refresh, you'll see that it is way thicker now, so you can easily see the outline that is dotted. So going back to the examples, let's look at dashed, the solid. Let's try dashed. Sorry, wrong. Let's try dashed. Let's try dashed. So if you can see the dashed, you see that it is not dotted, it is dashed. It is dashed. So the dashed is way better. So we can also try let me see, solid. Yeah, this one looks like the border, it will just be a straight line. So let's try solid. Save this and refresh. See, solid, just like the border. Then let's try double. double, save this, and you see there are two lines stacked on each other. Then the last one I'll try is groove, not groover, groove. Yeah, so you can go ahead and try the others by yourself. You don't need me. You can try read, insert, outset, none. These are all values for the outline style property. So this is the property, and this is the value, this is the value, this is the value, and so on and so forth. So you see the description beside it. I think that's all for outline style. Then the following, okay, yeah, this is an example of what they will look like, right? So, but it's good to always try it out because you don't know how your browser's interpretation might differ from this one here. Then we have outline color. So the outline color property is used to set the color of the outline. The color can be set by either the name, which specifies the color name like red, blue, green, purple, orange, or you have RGB, specify a RGB value like this. Then we have hex, specify the hex value. Then we have invert. Then okay, let's try them out. So let's give it outline color. Outline color. Let's say if you notice, currently the outline color is using the color of the text, but I want to give it its own color now. Let me say brown or something, rosy brown, whatever that looks like. And if I refresh, yeah, looks cool. Let me change this to solid because I'm not feeling this groove. I'm not feeling your groove. Yeah, solid looks better. Okay, then we can also use RGB. How did they write it? I think 255. I'm just going to put some random values here and hope that it looks like something visible. Okay, so save this. Not you. Okay, I changed it to something something I can't even see. Was I supposed to put a space here? I don't think so. Well, if it's Visual Studio Code, it will literally just show you a preview of what that color looks like. But okay, I think I know what to do. I'm going to use, where is it? Color picker. Let me pick this. This is the RGB. I can just copy this, then paste it here. Okay, let me see what this will look like. And why is it not showing? RGB. No idea why that's not working. Oh, I saw the mistake. Style solid, and I was changing instead of here. I was changing the outline, the outline style instead of the outline color. Okay, that was a bit embarrassing. Okay, yeah, this works. So we can also do, let me see. Color panel, let me change the color to this purple, and we can get the hex code here, copy it, and to write hex code you just hashtag, and that's all. I think should work. Yeah, that's how you write hex. So we've done RGB hex. Then invert basically just gives it a very opposite color to the current background color, so that it's easy for the user to point it out. So okay, I did not save that. Save this, then refresh. Yeah, invert works perfectly fine. So that's basically it for outline color. Then we have outline width. We've already used this one, I think. Okay, we have the outline shorthand property. Just like border, so instead of writing border width, border height, border color, I just did border 1px solid black. The outline property is a shorthand property for setting the following individual properties like outline width, outline style, and outline color. Okay, so let's just do outline width, outline style, and outline color. So outline width, we can say thick and dotted and red. So we can comment this out, and we have a thick dotted outline that is red. So yeah, instead of having to write its outline style, outline width, you can just use the shorthand property to put everything into one. Specify the width first, then the style, then the color next. Okay, then we have outline offset. The outline offset property adds space between an outline and the edge of the border of an element. This space between an element and its outline is transparent. So outline offsets, let me highlight that. And this one we have outline, which takes in all three of these values. Okay, before you write outline style required, you don't have to write required, you just write the outline style. Then for this, let's give it outline offset 20px. So this just puts a 20px of space between the border and the offset, and the outline rather. So this space here is what you call the outline of offset. So it offsets the outline, right? So again, you can specify this using numbers, right? So 1, 2, 3, any number you want it to be, just write it, and that's all in pixels. So that's basically it. So let's turn our attention to layout, CSS layout. So CSS layout overview. CSS page layout techniques allow us take elements contained in a web page and control where they are positioned relative to their default position in normal layout flow rather. The other elements around them, their parent container or the main viewport window. So what this is basically saying is that there are several layout techniques that allow us to adjust the position of elements in the page, right, in relation to either the parent or the main window, that's the screen that you are viewing that page on. So each technique has its uses, it has its advantages, it has its disadvantages, and no technique is designed to be used in isolation, right? Meaning there are several techniques, but they all have their pros and cons, and you are supposed to use all of them together instead of using only just one to do everything, right? So by understanding what each method is designed for, you'll be in a good place to understand which is the best layout tool for each task. Normal flow. Normal flow is how the browser lays out HTML pages by default when you do nothing to control page layout, right? So the normal flow is what we have been looking at since we started. This is a normal flow, this is a normal flow. All the other pages that we've created are all normal flows. Note here how the HTML is displayed in the same order in which it appears in the source code, meaning how you write it is how it is displayed, with elements stacked up one top of another. The first paragraph followed by the other list followed by the second paragraph, which is exactly how it was written in the HTML. First paragraph, then the another list, then another paragraph. The elements that appear one below the other are described as block elements, in contrast to inline elements, which appear one beside the other, like the individual words in a paragraph, right? So I've explained inline and block severally. I don't think we need to go over this again. When you use CSS to create layout, you are moving the elements away from the normal flow. So you're basically saying, nah, I don't like the way this normal flow is. I want to have probably I love cats somewhere. Okay, let's say we want to have I love my cat here. Then I want to have the list here. So I can have buy cat food, then exercise, then cheer up friend, right? Then I can now have the end here. So instead of having them stacked one above the other, we are having them sit in one line. There is a way to do this, right? This is not the normal flow, but it is a technique that we can use to achieve this result. So when you use CSS to create a layout, you are moving the elements away from the normal flow. But for many of the elements on your page, normal flow will create exactly the layout you need. This is why starting a well-structured HTML document is so important, as you can then work with the way things are laid out by default rather than fighting against it. So basically what they are saying is, most of the times you wouldn't want to change this, right? In a normal situation, this one here is better than this one that I just created up here, right? So if you know how to structure HTML pages well, you wouldn't need to change the layout most of the time. Okay, the methods that can change how elements are laid out in CSS are as follows. We have the display property. Standard values such as block, inline, or inline block can change how elements behave in normal flow. So I've already demonstrated this. We have an entire layout method which are switched on the value of display. So you can say display block, display inline block, right? The one that I have not discussed yet is float. So floats, applying a float value such as left can cause block level elements to wrap alongside one side of an element, like the way images sometimes have text floating around them in magazine layouts. Right, so let's try out this float. So we have, let me undo this, then I'll say a floats. Okay, before I do that, let's see what the default behavior is. You can see the link here. Then if I say float left, save this, go back here. Okay, it doesn't do much. So do I have to use an image? I do not want to have to create another document. I don't want to have to create another document. Let me do something real quick. I want to create let's just work with one of our previous documents. Alright, so for the examples, we are talking about floats. So take this to be a separate video so that doesn't get too long. So for floats, let's look at for a document that has a lot of content so that to be easier to. So let me see this breakout B. Then okay, open it up. Let's see. Okay, I think we can use this. This is what it looks like by default. Okay, this is what it looks like. So we can say we can use float here, and the difference will be very obvious, I believe. So let's give this a float of left. So which part is that? We have the recipient. Let's see, float left. So that does. Great. So you see how everything tries to wrap it around this recipient, right? Okay, let's use the sender instead. I think that will look better. See the sender. Okay, that's the header. That's the sender. So cut this from here. Where's the header? And put it here. Save this, and we see. Great. The header moves here, but this doesn't look good. So let me change it to right. Great. Now it's better. So basically, what the float does is that it takes the element that you've given the float value of, then put it in that direction. So what it does now is it took this header and took it to the right, then wrapped all the other content around it. Okay, that's what it basically did. So let's try it out, maybe using the subject of study. I should probably use one that has an image. Yeah, this bond image is here, so I can use this breakout A. Yeah, this is good. So where is it? So that's the only image in the document, right? So we can easily just give it a star and say ing float left. So it stays on the left, but all the other text wraps around it. Or if I say float to right, it goes to the right, so it will leave here and come here, and the text will wrap around it. Yeah, so that's basically how float works. So there are way better ways to use to do your layout, but float works sometimes. Like we're explaining, it's all about learning what works for the task at hand, so you can implement them. So because usually you'll be using several types of layouts together in a single document. So back to float. We've talked about display property. We've talked about floats. Now the position property. The position property allows you to precisely control the placement of boxes inside other boxes. Static positioning is the default normal of float, but it can cause elements to be laid out using other different values. Do we have to touch this? I don't know, just some of these things you can try it out yourselves, right? You don't have to go into the details of everyone, right? So I'll just leave some of these ones for you to try out yourself, because I don't see them as very important. There's table layouts, there's multi-column layouts. Most of these are just they are not the main thing, right? But it's good to know how they work. The two ones that you'll be using most regularly is this display property and float. These are the two main ones, right? You can do position, absolute, position relative, so this, yeah, you can do position fixed. Okay, so there are several of these. I think I should have a document for CSS positioning. I don't know where I saved it now. Filter yourself, history, no results found. Let me see. CSS look procedure, CSS layout plan. Is it this one? Let me see this one. Yeah, we have positioning. Yeah, so for CSS positioning we have static. This one is just the defaults basically. Then we have relative. Then we have absolute. Then we have fixed. Then we have sticky. Let's just try out some of these quickly. So let's go back to Cascade. So we have a div here. Okay, so for the first one, static is just static default, no movement. I don't think we need to try it. Then we have relative. Let me copy this. Take a look at where the box is now. So if I should add this, it's not going to shift much, just going to move a bit, just a bit. Yeah, you can see that it's moved from the top 20 pixel, then from the left 10 px. So I should increase this to 50. It gives more space. Now the only reason why this top and left, which you can also use right bottom, is working is because we've already given it a position of relative, so it knows that okay, it is adjustable, right? Then we also have absolute. Now to use the absolute, you have to have two boxes, one inside another. Okay, so I'm going to clean this. I'm going to do absolute here. Then I'll put another small div inside here that says span, like span. I'll say new. New. This works. Then you can say span. And then that's when we'll not give these details. So span will be this is supposed to be relative. Save this and let me see. Let me change the color of the text. change it to color will be which color? Say black. Font size, let's see, 50px, so that it's very easy to see. As you can see, this is it here, right? So we can adjust it by saying left, let's say 10px. Do I want to do that? Okay, let me see. There's space. Okay, there's already space to the left, so there's no need to change the left. We can use the right instead. Let's say right 10px. Right, so it moves. Now I'm not satisfied with that. Say 30, and we have 30 here, which is better. So this is another type of position. You know, all we are trying to do is mess with the layout, right? Because the default layout, if we do not have this, if we take this out and we take this out, if I save this, you would see that the default layout is just to add it to the text and to keep going, right? But we want to do something that is different from the default layout. That's why we are adding all of this. So back to this, we have fixed. Let's add this fixed. So yeah, fixed. Now we've changed the position such that it is, when you use fixed, it is no longer inside this box. It is now, okay, let me do something. Let me show you the difference. So this is absolute. Absolute works in relation to the container that it is inside, right? While fixed places it somewhere on the screen. Fixed works in relation to the screen, right? It doesn't work in relation to the container it is inside, right? So it is just in this position. No matter what happens, it remains in this position if it is fixed. So no matter how much we scroll or how much we move on this page, it will always be here. That's the advantage of fixed. While for sticky is a bit different. Sticky, you don't, it moves but then it sticks to the top. That's the thing with sticky, and it doesn't take these values, not necessary here. Say top 10px. So when you scroll, it sticks to the top. You cannot see that now because there's not enough text. So let me add. Save this and refresh. So when we scroll, you see it sticks. It stays normally, then when we scroll, it sticks to the top. Right, that's the advantage of sticky. It sticks like the name implies. So those are the different types of positioning. This also come in handy, but with practice you would get used to it eventually. So the sticky, fixed, absolute, relative, then static. Right, so let's go back here and back to our document. Where is it? Yeah. So you try out table layout. I've already done position for you. Try out table layout and multi-column layout. If you check, I was not supposed to do this position because I used this for kids and teenagers. If you check the name, you see CSS positioning for kids and teenagers. That's why I had to do a special lesson on positioning. But other than that, I don't think for most adults this is necessary, right? It's something you can always figure out and try out yourself. So now just do this table layout and multi-column layout. Then yeah, that's basically it. Display property. This property allows us to change the default way something displays. Everything in normal flow has a value of display used as the default way that elements are set to behave. For example, the fact that paragraphs in English display one below the other is due to the fact that they are styled with display block. If you create a link around some text inside the paragraph, that link remains in line with the rest of the text and doesn't break onto a new line. That's because the A element is displayed inline by default. Same with the span elements, by default it is inline. And what they do is they stay along with the rest of the text, right? So the reason why I put it in a new element, in the span element, but it still stays like it's part of the text, is because the span element is by default display inline. But if I want to change that, I can say display block and it will be on its own line now. So refresh this, you see it's on its own line now. So that's the difference between the behavior of block elements and inline elements. So you can change block elements to inline elements, you can change inline elements to block elements depending on the layouts that you want. So I've changed this back to normal, so it goes back to this. You can change this default display behavior. For example, the li element is displayed block by default, meaning that list items display one below the other in our English document. If we change the display value to inline, they now display next to each other as words do in a sentence. The fact that you can change the value of display for any elements means you can pick HTML elements for their semantic meaning without being concerned about how they look, right? So you're only focused on the semantic meaning. This way helps you, right? It removes the pressure of being concerned of, oh, how is it going to look? Knowing that you always have control, you always have power over how it looks. You can always change it to suit the look that you want, right? So you're more concerned about its semantic meaning. The way they look is something that you can change. In addition to being able to change the default presentation by turning an item from block to inline and vice versa, there are some bigger layout methods that start out as a value of display. However, when using these, you will generally need to invoke additional properties. The two most important of our purposes when discussing layouts are display flex and display grid. So before we talk about display flex and display grid, there is one more type of display I want to show you, which is display none. So as you can guess, just removes it, right? I basically say don't be displayed. That's the use of display none. Okay, but going back to this, we have two of the most important types of display in HTML and CSS is display flex and display grid. So what do they invoke? They invoke a flex box and the grid layouts. So these are the two most popular layouts we use in HTML. So we'll start talking about that from our next class. But before then, you can go and do some research. What is display? What is the flex box? What is grid? How do they work? How are they different? How are they similar? So that when we come next week, we can start flying. Alright, catch you all in the next one.